Can Adam Schiff, a Democratic California Congressman and chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, be prosecuted for sedition? In my opinion, the answer is yes. Members of Congress are subject to the same laws as are all citizens of the United States, with one exception, and that is Article 1, Section 6 of the United States Constitution, which states, "They," referring to Congress, "shall in all cases, except treason, felony, and breach of the peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses, and in going to and returning from the same, and for any speech or debate in either house. They shall not be questioned in any other place." I've heard both Republican and Democrat congressmen and women say on TV shows that Mr. Schiff has immunity from seditious statements because he is a congressman. They are wrong. A member of Congress only has immunity from statements made during their attendance at House sessions, in going to and returning from House sessions, and for statements during House debates or speeches. From 2017 to 2018, Mr. Schiff's House Intelligence Committee investigated President Trump for what the Democrats said was Trump's collusion with Russia during the 2016 presidential campaign. The objective of the investigation was to remove President Trump from office. Mr. Schiff and his committee interviewed over 50 individuals in an attempt to obtain evidence that President Trump had colluded with the Russians to get the Russians to interfere in the 2016 election. Mr. Schiff would not allow any of the testimony from these individuals to be released to the public. During the investigation, Mr. Schiff would frequently appear on televised news shows and state that he had evidence that President Trump had colluded with the Russians during the 2016 campaign. Take a look.
So there's clear evidence on the issue of collusion, and this adds to that body of evidence. There's ample evidence of collusion in plain sight, and that is true.
Have Democrats found any evidence of collusion?
Yes, we have. You can see evidence in plain sight on the issue of collusion, pretty compelling evidence. And there is significant evidence of collusion. There is ample evidence, and indeed there is, of collusion of people in the Trump campaign with the Russians. I think there's plenty of evidence of collusion or conspiracy. All of this is evidence of collusion.
He was lying to the American public in order to attempt to force President Trump from office. He was making false, seditious statements against the president in order to force an overthrow of the Trump administration, an overthrow of the government. 90% of the media embraced Mr. Schiff's lies and magnified them in order to assist Mr. Schiff in an effort to overthrow the Trump administration. But recently, the transcripts of the testimony given to Mr. Schiff and the Intelligence Committee were released. The release was forced by the acting director of National Intelligence, against Mr. Schiff's wishes to keep them hidden from the American public. The transcript showed that not a single witness interviewed by Mr. Schiff was able to provide any evidence that President Trump had colluded with Russia. Mr. Schiff knew that there was no evidence, but he knowingly committed seditious libel against President Trump many times in an attempt to force him out of office and overthrow the Trump administration. Now, sedition is the crime of revolting, inciting revolt against the government, or advocating the overthrow of the government. Prosecutions for sedition are rare, but not unthinkable, because of the broad protection of free speech under the First Amendment. But there are limits to protections under the First Amendment. Sedition remains a crime in the United States under 18 U.S.C. Section 2384. A federal statute that punishes seditious conspiracy, and 18 U.S.C. 2385, which outlaws advocating the overthrow of the government by force, and 18 U.S.C. 2383, which addresses rebellion and insurrection. Now, to prove sedition, the prosecution must show 1. Wrongful intent that would 2. Likely result in harm, and 3. That the harm is imminent. Mr. Schiff knowingly advocated that President Trump had colluded with the Russians during the 2016 campaign. Mr. Schiff knew that his statements were lies. Mr. Schiff lied in order to get President Trump removed from office, to overthrow the Trump administration, to overthrow the government. Mr. Schiff's seditious libel was designed to get President Trump removed from office before the next election. Harm to the government that was imminent, not in the distant future. In my opinion, a prosecution for sedition against Mr. Schiff and his conspirators would succeed. The Department of Justice should look at this. Well, I hope this helps. Have a good day.